The Diary of V. Frankenstein. Extract 11. Vincent Frankenstein. Date 1800s. It has been a sad farewell, but John and I have just returned to my world, and we are finally making our way back to my beloved Mary. My heart beats fast with anticipation of finally being back with her, but I get ahead of myself in my eagerness to see her. 4 days after we left the town aflame, it was time to cross over to a world John had chosen for Anne and the babies. Above an empty sea and slightly cloudy sky, John engaged the mechanics that powered the ability to cross over, and as before, the deep blue lightning pulsed until a blur. Anne held the babies tightly as she sat at the table, and I sat strapped in by some rope. Suddenly, I felt turned inside out and back again, and in my weakened state, I was exceptionally dizzy. And then it was over, and we appeared in a totally different environment. It was warm, and the sun blazed fierce above us. John turned from the helm and smiled widely as he put his hat on, which had rested on the ear of the horse. He then turned back and steered the ship forward. As he did, I unstrapped myself and stood, looking out. The sea was gone and replaced with thick green jungle foliage. Anne looked out too in silence. She simply cradled the babies with John, while John found what he was looking for. Ahead of us was a large opening in the jungle. The clearing was empty except for the bright green grass that carpeted the ground. John landed, and we surveyed our surroundings. There were jungle trees in every direction, but the denseness varied, and there was enough space to journey into the forest. Here you will be able to start a new life, Anne, John said, breaking the silence and smiling. There are many places you can explore or settle, many people you can get to know. People? Anne asked with confusion and a guarded expression. Yes, John beamed. Others who, like you, do not care for the outward appearance, but truly love what it means to be beautiful on the inside. If I'm right, and I think I am, he tapped next to his white eye, we shall be receiving some of that company very soon. Let's get to the ground so we can meet them on equal terms. They know it's me who has come. After some help, we all stood on the grass. Once we were comfortable, John sat down and threw off his leather boots. He then stood up quickly and flexed his toes, with his eyes closed, a look of pure delight on his face. I chuckled to myself, and loved to see his ability to be so free, and not worry about what others may think. My heart yearns to be like him in this way, and watching him, I realized that this was the whole point in our fight for equality. It was a desire to be free from prejudice and our outwardly appearance, and to be judged for being true to the beauty within. After a few moments, John opened his eyes and walked to Anne, taking young Mary in his arms and walking towards the edge of the jungle. Anne held young Vincent, and I followed a few paces behind. As we approached, we could hear various voices and noises getting closer and louder. John, in his wisdom, turned to me and gave me a stern look, his eyebrows coming together. Prepare yourself, Vincent. Remember your desire for equality and understanding. I understand, I replied softly, a small spark of indignation flaring into life at his presumption of me and my reaction. I am trying to change. He gave me an approving nod, just as dozens of people emerged from the shadows of the trees. Several of them ran towards John with excited shouts and joyous laughter. When they came to him, they slowed at the sight of the baby. Their wonder and delight grew when John showed them little Mary, and pointing to me, Anne, and little Vincent, he told them our names. As this happened, I took a few moments to survey those who had come to meet us. I confess it was hard not to gape at what I saw. They were of every age, size, colour, and creed you could imagine. There were people old in years who acted like children, and people who looked like children but acted old. Some women wore the clothes of men, and vice versa, and two men held hands and gazed at each other the way I gazed at Mary. There were a few people missing limbs like me, and a couple who had more limbs than normal. Yet what is normal? What a cruel and segregating word that is. I saw much more than what I have given here, but I feel I will err if I focus too much on their looks. I am so ashamed of the seemingly inbuilt prejudice that tries to take hold when I see any person who is different from me. I had to fight this monstrous behavior, and did so by reminding myself we are all human beings, deserving of love and kindness. Mary, John, and Anne have helped me to realize that if equality is to be achieved, I must understand the outward appearance doesn't matter, only the desire to be kind, respectful, loving, and understanding. I hope in time the conditioned prejudice leaves me entirely, and I can follow John's example. Having taken those few moments to observe all around me, I saw John turn to introduce them to me and Anne. I was nervous as he introduced me, and so conscious of my disability, but found it didn't take long to feel welcome when our hosts had such open and pure hearts. After the introductions, John had us sit in a circle, and he recited our story and adventure to those who wanted to listen. Some were more content playing in the grass, and one person read a book under a tree. The male couple, Amos and Edmund, sat with me, and I learned from them that John had whisked them away from a world where their love was condemned, and they were to be imprisoned for the crime of loving one another. Their world paralleled my own, and yet as I listened to their story and their pain, a sense of outrage and anger for their predicament threatened to assail me. Love is our greatest gift, for it is to be controlled and dictated by laws seemed so wrong, so grossly unfair and unjust. And now we must be getting Vincent back to his darling Mary, John said to conclude the story. I had been in conversation with Amos, comparing the reign of Queen Victoria from my world and his. It seemed that in his England the monarchy was vastly different. I yearned to know more, to understand what had changed, but there was no time. As quickly as disappointment arrived, it left at the thought of returning to Mary, the comfort of her company, and my burning desire for what I will call social justice and equality. A few in the circle clapped, and some hugged both Anne and I. Such open expressions of kindness took some getting used to, but I cannot deny it was joyful. Anne, John, the babies, and I gathered together. We knew it was time to say goodbye. "Thank you, John. I will miss you," Anne said, with tears in her eyes. "You helped me see my own goodness shine through my rough imitation of humanity, despite the horrors of my creation in early life. For this help you will not be forgotten." John smiled back. "You were never a rougher imitation, Anne. You are the best of us, and you are beautiful. Your new family will take care of you and show you your new home. I will come and visit when I can." He ruffled the hair of a small boy that ran through our throng, chasing another child and laughing. Not that I'm supposed to, or should even use this world as I have, but the other scriptorians need never know. This brought a wide smile on Anne's face, and the beauty shone through her that for a moment took my breath away. Composing myself, I took a step forward. "I will miss you, Anne," I said, trying to ignore the lightness of my left side and how even the knotted sleeve of my jacket blew in the light wind, emphasizing the empty space. "I wish we had more time to get to know each other, but thank you for taking care of me these past few days." "And I will miss you, Vincent," she replied. "Young Vincent and Mary will know of your courage and heroics to save us." I looked at the two babies and thought how wonderful it will be to start my own family with Mary, and the joy and love we will share. I once more tried not to think of her health and what might be wrong. I'm sure everything will be fine. Anne then laid the babies in makeshift travelling baskets and hugged me as gently as she could, but the wound at my shoulder still throbbed as she made contact. I masked the agony as best I could. John and I then made our way back to the Zeppelin. Once on the deck, I looked at the group that had gathered to wave us farewell. Though slightly sad to leave, I felt joy at this sight and the realization that it was over. I had put to right all the mistakes of my father and atone for his sins. With this thought, I pondered back to what had happened to Anne's father, my own father's original creation. I had asked Anne about this during my recovery, and after her initial hesitation and struggle with this topic, she finally said her sisters and mother had risen up against him after what he had done to them. I saw the disgust and pain in her face. I didn't need to inquire any more. We never spoke of the disturbing and tragic topic again. Their father had failed them beyond all comparison. But I knew Anne was the best hope for this new type of human life. She would raise Vincent and Mary in goodness, and they would live out their lives in happiness. I didn't even know how long they might live. They They are hardy and stronger than us, so I guess they might live a lot longer. Perhaps even forever. Who knows? Now that Anne and the babies were safely on their new home, John returned to the helm, and we waved a quick goodbye, which I felt keenly for the fact I only had one arm. I smiled to Anne and her new family as she did the same. John meanwhile guided the ship higher into the air and away from the clearing. He then initiated the crossover, and with one last wave to the fading image of Anne and the babies, I went to the table and strapped myself in. The blue lightning came and pulsed as always. Then trying my best to ignore the horrid feelings, I closed my eyes and waited until it was over. When I opened my eyes, we were back in the open skies above the ocean, and the wind blew coolly and waves chopped below us. And now it was done, and I have spent the afternoon writing this as we sail ever closer to England and my wife.